Welcome to When We're Not Hustling, a podcast where sex workers talk about everything but. I'm your host, Jessie Sage.
Put away the lingerie. I want to know you. Tell me more. I don't care about the news. I'd rather hear about you and see the world from your point of view. The coffee's already made, so I park the sheets, just pull up a chair and tell me more.
When We're Not Hustling is a weekly podcast that explores the lives and identities of sex workers outside of our work personas, our personal philosophies, ambitions, families, relationships, passions, spirituality, and so much more. We talk about our lives beyond the job, asking, what does the flexibility of sex work allow us to do, and who does it allow us to be? On this show, we learn who sex workers are outside of the work we're known for. When We're Not Hustling is an exploration of the people behind the fantasies. I'm very excited to announce that When We're Not Hustling is partnering with Black Venom Digital, a new web design and creative services agency for adult creators, entertainers, and entrepreneurs who need a professional, transparent partner to help grow their brands. To celebrate the birth of the agency and our partnership, we are giving away a free website to a lucky adult industry professional. That's right, free. The contest will run from August 26th to September 16th. To enter to win a custom-made website, follow Black Venom Digital on Insta and X. That's at BLKVNM Digital on Instagram and X, as well as Not Hustling Pod. Fill out the entry form at blackvenomdigital.com/raffle, which will also be linked in the show notes, and engage with us on socials up until September 16th when we pick and announce a winner. Terms and conditions apply. Hi, welcome back to another episode of When We're Not Hustling. I am your host, Jessie Sage. Today we are going to be talking to the lovely Amber Délice. She is an independent provider out of Boulder, Colorado. And I met her at, I know we keep bringing up over and over again, The Holy Hour, the book that Working Girls Press put out. But there's so many great sex working writers and sex workers who contributed to that project. So it keeps coming up on this show. But I met Amber in person in New York City over the summer because she wrote an essay for The Holy Hour. And we had such a nice time talking at the bar where we all signed each other's books that I thought I would have her on the show. She talks in this episode about the work that she does outside of sex work to give clients the kinds of experiences that they desire and imagine, not necessarily sexual experiences, but if they have bucket list items, they come to her and she helps to facilitate that for her. I want to save any conversation about that for her because she does an amazing job of explaining that profession that I did not know existed until I met Amber. So this should be really interesting and exciting. Let me see. Our after party guest this month is Melody Garcia. So make sure in a couple days to check that out. We will be, Melody, Emily, and I will be discussing this episode. And other than that, I only have a few announcements. The first one is that if you'd like to support the show, you can go to patreon.com/sapiotextual. The other one is that you can follow us on socials. All of them are Not Hustling Pod on Twitter and Instagram. And you can email us if you want at nothustlingpod@gmail.com. And if you want to come on the show, there is a form on the website, which is beautiful. Our new website, nothustling.com. And you can check that out. You can find all of the episodes there, but you can also go in there if you're a sex worker who has a story that you want to share. You can go in there and fill out the form and we will get that. Let me see. I think that's all for today. So I want to just give Amber time. So I'm going to jump into that. But before I do, I will give her a brief introduction. Amber is an independent provider and companion based in Boulder, Colorado. She's blessed to travel often and has clients that not only fly her to them, but also come to her for adventures in Colorado. She is a lover of sensuality, writing, dance, immersive theater, travel, and poetry. She's also an ex-food and wine journalist. So that makes her a great dinner date. So why don't we go ahead and turn right to it? Hi, Amber. Welcome to When We're Not Hustling.
Hi, Jessie. It's great to be here.
It is. How are you doing?
I'm good. I just ate a quarter of a pound of roasted chicken and it's all settling in. So
Well, it sounds good. I had a chicken this afternoon too, but because I had leftover chicken parm. So I love leftovers, actually. I know there's like people who like them and people who don't, but that's what I ate. So I wanted to have you on the show because I know you run another business, and for the people who aren't familiar with you, why don't you give yourself an introduction?
So I'm Amber Délice. I've been in sex work since 2008, but I have been a companion for the last 6 years or so.
What did you start as?
A dancer.
Oh, okay. Nice.
In the clubs.
I've never done that. I started in online and then became a companion, but there's different routes.
Yeah, different routes. Yeah. And then of course hopped over to the seeking arrangement route, quickly hopped away.
Yeah. I don't think people stay on that route very long.
I know we all have like pretty similar feelings. Mine, it's like, it feels like the Wild West over there, and our world thankfully can feel more structured. And I had been seeking that structure for many years. And I work out of Colorado, fly around, and I really, really love like 2-3 day dates. And of course we'll kind of get into like the overlap of my perhaps like civilian world and the Amber world, and why I love long experiences. So
is that your norm? Really long experiences like that?
Yeah, it is. And as we know, like so many of us enjoy, some of us enjoy 1 hour, 2 hour, 6 hours, the prime. Yeah. And I really love, like a 2 day, the 3 day is my favorite.
Nice. So when you have a 2 or 3 day date, do you normally travel somewhere else, or do people come in to you, or is it local, or what's the norm for you?
Yeah, the norm for me actually, and has been for many years, is that I don't really work very often in Colorado. Yeah, I have a few regulars here, but we actually usually travel other places. So it's nice for me. I enjoy containership in things too. So I enjoy, just being able to be home, and then kind of when I'm traveling, most of the time is when I'm working as Amber. So
I like containership, and that's why I like in-person work so much better than online work. I felt like online people were like, I couldn't separate it all from it. People were like texting me, emailing me, talking on the phone like all day. And there's something so nice about the work that we do where we're like, set up an appointment and then I'll come and spend 1 hour for me, like 1 hour to 24 hours with you. And then I'll go back to my life. And there's something that's really nice about that, because you can be where you are.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm so place-based, and it's and also like I live in Boulder, and it's very I've been here for over a decade, so it's very easy to run into people as both people feel a little overlappy. Yeah.
How big is Boulder?
Okay, the last time I checked, I'm pretty bad with populations, but it's a little over 100,000 people.
Okay.
It's a small city.
Yeah. I've been there and it's beautiful, but I don't know exactly how big it is. So what do you do in your other life when you're not being Amber?
My other life. So I've often, we've seen the conversations on Twitter when people are like, what do you say you do, besides our work, when people ask you, do you just go with the sort of gray rock situation of like, I'm an accountant, or do
Yeah.
you make something up, or, something maybe more like, salesperson, whatever.
Yeah.
The sort of, I guess, lucky situation I have is that my civilian work can actually sort of not be a lie, in that I design immersive theater for people. And that's it's something that I've thought about a lot about our work, is that we are actually doing that.
Yeah. Yeah.
The time, right? We're playing a character. That character is having interactions with the, quote unquote audience
Yeah.
and or client.
Mhm.
Um, and something I really pinned down around this over the last couple of years, when we're sometimes people will like accuse us of like not being genuine in our appointments. How genuine do you need to
Yeah.
be, etc.
Mhm.
Well, when you go to theater, immersive theater, do you complain that the actors weren't being their genuine selves, weren't um,
Right.
weren't telling you their real name? No, if you're moved by theater, then you're moved by it, and you don't go and like complain that it wasn't a
Yeah.
real situation. So I
Right.
often use that to describe how the overlap exists. But in my more civilian work, designing immersive theater for people, I do it one-on-one or
Mhm.
with couples. Again, here's the overlap. But they're not often an experience that ends in intimacy in the way that our work can and
Yeah.
usually does. They're usually for transformation for the couple trying to get out of a stuck place.
Oh,
Get
interesting. Yeah.
like some emotional alchemy, and or if it's I'm designing for one person, it's like they're usually in a life place that where they're feeling, yeah, similarly like stuck, but maybe it's like they're changing where they live or their job,
Mhm.
and they just need a different lens to look through. And like, I'm not a therapist. I would not call myself a
Mhm.
therapist by any means. But it can be whimsical, it can be adventurous, but ultimately there is like an underlying meaning to it. So yeah, that's the high.
Oh, so I want to ask you more specifics about that. But first,
Sure.
before I do that, I want to tell you that when I was in grad school, a piece that I read that really resonated with me, that did form my thinking about non-monogamy, about commercial sex, about like anything outside of uh heteromononormativity, is a piece by a Canadian philosopher named Ronald D'Souza. And the name of his article is Love is Theater.
Mhm.
And what he does is he says that, like, in it, he wants to resuscitate this notion of love, like, as theater, and intimacy as theater. And
Yeah.
he talks about casual sex, but he also talks about commercial sex. He brings that in, and this notion of like intimacy with strangers and what that can bring to you that you can't necessarily have like in your everyday relationships or interactions, like as a way of being like unstuck or moved in some way. And it's interesting because he makes really similar claims about like the suspension of disbelief that you go into when you do theater, or when you go and consume theater, that we ought to take a similar attitude when we have these short-term encounters. And so I thought you might find that very interesting, but it's like
Yeah.
a defense of that in a way.
Oh yeah, I love that. I'm sure you'll put them in the show notes, but
Yeah.
I'd love to check that out. Yeah, that's actually a phrase that I use. Is it's sacred theater.
Yeah.
Um,
Mhm.
in the realm of especially relating, especially when I'm working with a couple, and even I mean, this has kind of been the story of my life, but like almost every job I've ever had has taken a long time to explain. So whether it's sex work, whether it's this, whether it's like I'm just like I never have a, a one word answer
Yeah.
for what I do. But
So what kind of experiences can you give us a couple of examples of what that looks like?
Yeah. So there are, many other people. It's not a big industry, quote unquote, but there are other people working the way that I work, doing kind of this one-on-one immersive theater. But I recently went to Europe, and
Mhm.
about, I would say 18 of us got together, and
Oh,
we
18 people that do the sort of work that you do?
yeah, and with different skill sets like that maybe come from more of like a lighting and design lens of theater, and then people that build, installations. Like that's not something
Mhm.
that I really do. But all of us came together and we designed a 48-hour experience for one man who had hired us to do so.
Hired 18 of you to create an experience for him?
Yeah.
Oh
Yeah.
my
Which again, the analogies, but so
God.
um yeah, but for him so there's a bit of a structure that I'm gonna kind of like leave out because identifying details, but
Sure.
um essentially he applied to have an experience designed for him, and it's this whole process that some of my mentors have created, and they're quite well known
Wow.
in this industry. And so people apply to have this work created for them. So
Mhm.
yeah, so he was accepted, and we read his, it was a 50-page application
Oh
to
my gosh.
that has so many just deep self-inquiry questions about where he is in his life, what he's moving through, and actually so quite a lot, not only in work and community, but he had just transitioned also from being a
Oh,
woman.
wow.
So yeah, so there's quite a lot to work with and to support him with.
Yeah.
And so yeah, so our experience basically was well, some of the questions that came up were like, how can we not only like help him find community, because that's one of the
Mhm.
big desires he had, but also like really come to know who he is now and who he wants to be and
Oh.
to show
Mhm.
up, and then how to, not to be too woo woo about it, but like not only like attract that community, but like really the spaces where he could feel safe to show up as that
Yeah. Mhm.
self. And
Mhm.
yeah, so we actually ended up kind of, he loves to hike, and so part of the experience was where he was sort of passed off from one of us to another, going on basically like a long pilgrimage throughout Portugal.
Oh
And so
my gosh.
yeah, and for some of us, some were writers, some were artists, and so we would all, and so it's interesting because it is like a blend, much like our work, of
Mhm.
who we authentically are. We're
Yeah.
showing ourselves, and it is also a role. It is also work, and so we brought our own stories of how of times that we've struggled to fit in, times that we've like changed communities, and also just
Mhm.
the questions that we're still struggling with because we're all
Yeah. Yeah.
and so
And
yeah.
like talked about those while you're hiking?
Yeah, people kind of like one by one, and then we did end up like sort of there was a tattoo that he had recently gotten that was meaningful to him, and so we ended up making that a symbol or like a sigil that he would then find on like a train station platform, and so then he would know that was the right train for him, and so he would get on the train, and then like
Yeah.
actor come up to him and like maybe do something to indicate it's time to get off the train. And then
Mhm.
he would get
Mhm.
off and meet someone else. And so we just took him on this like long conversational plus some alone time to, think and reflect
Yeah.
image to where we had then been staying in a giant sort of place in the middle of nowhere in Portugal. Then
I
we
have to say, as a podcaster and a writer, I just want to take a moment to like hold on to this idea of a conversational pilgrimage. That
Mm,
is so lovely.
yeah,
I love that idea. Yeah.
thank you
For
for
conversation is can be so so healing and so enriching, and especially when you enter into it with an openness, and I love that idea.
Mhm. Thank you for pointing that out. I don't know that I've ever phrased it like that, and it really lands. So,
Yeah,
yeah.
it really
Thank
does. As soon as you said it, I was like, a conversational pilgrimage. We all need that at some point.
Mhm. Yeah, and with like no, there's a lot of I feel like it maybe at least in my circles, there's a lot of focus on like transformation, like you're supposed to like transform someone, through whether it's therapy or
Mhm.
self-help, just we're always trying to like fix ourselves. And it's just
Yeah.
I also really like the beauty of that phrase that it's just that's like what it is. And it's not like there it wasn't an intention to, fix or change in the moment. It's just like I'm revealing myself and you're revealing yourself in the ways that feel discerning and good for us. And like we can't plan what beauty and growth is going to come from that.
Right, right. My partner wrote a dissertation on intimacy, on cam modeling actually, but about intimacy and intimacy like between like cam models and their clients. And in one of the parts that was like more theoretical, one of the things that they talked about there was like defining intimacy as like through, I think it was like Zemmel, but a particular like sociologist talked about intimacy as like this like reveal and like conceal of like sharing who we are. And so like it's funny because earlier you were saying like it doesn't often, like these adventures don't often end in like intimacy in the way our work does. But if you're to think about what intimacy is, like those moments of like not maybe physical contact, but like contact, like emotional or spiritual or some other sort of like contact when of like the revealing of oneself like to somebody new is I love that idea.
Yeah. Yeah, and I've of course like it brought this into artwork as well. Yeah, and I kind of wanted to give an example of that too, but not sure if it's time yet.
Yeah, yeah, go ahead.
Because I'm like you, like anyone can steal this if they want to steal it, but because I do know some companions, and I'm actually curious about you and your work who bring in like these elements of kind of like theatrics and like creativity like into the work, whether it's like in a moment or it's actually like part of the whole thing. Yeah, when I say that, is there anything that comes to mind for you
Yeah,
or?
there is. So I have a client that I see ongoingly. I'm going to see him next week, actually, who um, it's a role play, but it's like an ongoing role play where I pretend to be his therapist. And we actually sit down and do like a 45-minute to 50-minute therapy session. And I am not a therapist, but like I've been in therapy for many, many years. So I know how it goes. And then like at the end of the therapy, we move into something, we like cross over the taboo and like move into something that's more like intimate in the physical way, in order to work through like it's like a cross between like therapy and then sex surrogacy, like all in one, and so I do that. I also have some people that I do other sort of like role play with, but it feels very much more like theater in like, I don't know. What came to mind is like one time, and I thought this was so cute. I have a client who I see maybe once a month. And he always wants to do like a sort of mommy dom like thing, and we always work out beforehand like what the scene's going to be like. Am I going to walk in, like what is the whole theatrics of like what's happening? And I thought it was really cute because one time we met for coffee right before, because part of the theatrics was that I was going to pick him up after work and he was going to like wait there for me, and then we were going to like go home together, and he handed me a book, and in the book like had my like donation, and he said, look, here's I brought home my report card, it's all hundreds.
I love it.
Which was so cute, but it was really funny because I mean it was funny obviously because he's paying me, but he's saying like it was a report card, it's all hundreds. But on the other hand, it was very fun because it wasn't just straightforward. We had this whole scene that we set beforehand, and we knew what our roles were, and we knew what was going to happen. So, and and I'm not a BDSM provider, despite like what I just like said. I'm not like a huge, but I will play because I don't have the BDSM skills. I'm not like I don't do all of that. I'm a GFE provider. That being said, like I will, if there's certain things that they want to play out or certain scenarios, like I've been very willing to go through and set all of that up. Yeah. What about you?
Yeah, no, I love hearing that. And when you say that, I think about like, yeah, I have no idea, but I don't know. I mean, yeah, I don't know how many kind of like, classic GFE providers are using that as much as BDSM based
Yeah, right.
work. But it is it's creative, it's generative,
Mhm.
especially, when we have regulars that we want to keep, relationships we want to keep, like
Yeah.
bringing that. I mean, and it so overlaps with like long-term relationship, right? It's like
Yeah. Yeah.
not letting stagnation and inertia control the relationship. And
Right.
yeah, so
I actually really appreciate that you said that because I feel like there is, and I don't know if you sense this pressure too, but I feel like there's a lot of pressure, especially within like activism, to talk about our work as somehow completely separate from like our lives or our desires or anything like that. And while I understand from like a workers' rights perspective, like the motivation to be like, this is work. And it is work. Obviously, it's work. But I also think it's like, to me, I always feel like there's something important about talking, especially with regulars, especially with long term regulars, that it is work. It is also sex. It is also relationship building. And that there's something, it's a job, but it's not a job like other kinds of jobs. Like there's something qualitatively like different about it. And I wish there was a little bit more space to talk about what that looks like too.
mhm. It makes me happy to hear you say that because I've felt similar threads to that. Like of course, sex work is work, but to me, it really is like more than work, and it
Mhm.
could be just me or just obviously like a certain percentage. But I have found like some of my greatest challenges and periods of growth have come either as directly a result of this work or adjacent to this work. It is like 100% a part of my soul's purpose. It's not my whole purpose, but
Yeah,
it is
right.
so related
Yeah.
to it that it's like whenever I can, and like, of course, we're like, I am like privileged and lucky to be choosing this work from a place of relative
Yeah,
security.
absolutely. And I say that too. And also to be choosing who I'm working with. I just had a client last week who upset me, said something that I thought was very, very boundary pushing. And I was just like, I'm not going to see you anymore, and I recognize that that's a privilege and that not everyone can do that and pick
Yeah.
and choose who they want to see.
Yeah. And it's like, if we are recognizing that, it's like, well, how can this work be an extension of living whatever we want to live into the world? Like, can it be a playground for that? Like,
Yeah.
isn't that pleasure like the actual fuel for our clients who are our like respectful, you know,
Yeah.
like, yeah, and so that's sort of why I'm like, I think the the thing I would even like invite is like how to bring in like a little more like play,
Yeah.
theater into
Mhm, mhm.
the TFT space.
Yeah.
Um, and yeah, I mean it has all the things for me anyway, where it's like I'm not doing it all the time. It's not like the whole 36 hours.
Yeah.
But
Well, of course. Yeah.
yeah, but
But I also think that I'm even like thinking about when it's not so explicit. I think, and because obviously with the people that I just brought up, they come and they say, I want to do this therapy scene. Or I think it would be really cool if you picked me up after school, or, whatever it is that's the like fantasy. But also, I think that once you do this work and you are working with like a lot of different people, and we do show up differently for different people based on like their energy and what they want. And, I always think about the fact that like there are some people who there's just kind of like this raw, like kind of animalistic thing. There's some people who really want to be nurtured. There's some people who come in afraid because they lack experience, and you like serve more as like a teacher role. There's all these different ways that people show up to us, and not necessarily in the realm of fantasy, but there's a way that they pull out different parts of us, right? So like I'm playing one role with one person and a totally different type of role with a different person. And that doesn't mean it's like inauthentic. It just means that there's different dynamics with different people. And that's also, I think, somewhat theatrical in that way.
Yeah. I really, I'm a little biased, but I really feel like our work is immersive theater. And if it were like thought more of like that, then yeah, there's so many annoying questions that we receive might vanish. But
yeah. So tell me about another, like, so that's obviously like a really large scale one. What about when it's like you with one person or you with a couple? What do those look like?
So there's one, so I'll preface this by saying that sometimes I allow more mystery and unknown to come into the experience. And so for this one couple, uh, they were just feeling really really stuck in their ways, and you know how when you're in relationships sometimes you create I call them like caricatures, like it's like who's the one that does all the planning, who's the one that does the
Yeah.
driving, the one, and then you start to get like a little stuck if you don't kind of like shake it up every now
Yeah.
and then. It can be a power dynamic thing that's unhealthy. So anyway, so they were kind of in those roles, and so I've made this I use like I'm really not like an artist, or definitely not like an installation person, but I like making kind of like little artifacts, and I'm really good with Mod Podge. So take anything from this interview. I'm really good with Mod Podge. So I made these archetype cards, and they had, core is one of them, teacher, just many different like ways that we show up in the world.
Yeah.
And let's see. I'm trying to remember what exactly one of them picked. I'm not sure, but what I had them do was we set up a scene, and so the man really loved to practice mixology, to make drinks, craft and smoke and all of that. And the women really like to go to bars, so they usually go together or whatever. But so we set up a scene in the mountains here in Colorado, where the scene would be that the kind of kitchen of it was where he was a bartender working late at night, and he was the last one, shift is ending, bar's closing, and she's outside and comes in, and she's had a really bad day and she really needs a drink, and she's the only one in the bar. So that's like the simple kind of premise setup. And then what I had them do was like separation, especially if you're working with couples, is really important, because you're kind of always in each other's energy. So like however if they live together, separating them for a little longer is good. I separated them. I told them to both like take showers, just cleanse, choose a beautiful outfit for the scene, and then that they would pick cards from this archetype deck. And so they wouldn't tell each other what they had picked. So so she had picked Virgin.
Oh, interesting.
And Engineer.
Okay. These are like very unsexy, but okay.
Yeah.
Everybody has their own things that they find sexy.
Yeah. I cannot at the moment remember what he picked, but I think that the story will Still be salient based on those.
When We're Not Hustling is brought to you by Assembly 4. Assembly 4 is a collective of sex workers and technologists working to bring the overall cost of sex work down through their advertising platform, Tryst.link. They also educate clients through the Good Client Guide and provide resources and articles written by and for sex workers. Assembly 4 caters to all genders and demographics and raises funds to fight for sex worker rights and against exploitation in the sex industry. Learn more at assembly4.com. ASSEMBLYFOUR.com. Thank you for listening to When We're Not Hustling. Please remember to subscribe, rate, and review us wherever you listen to your podcasts. Doing so will help other people find us. And if you're a sex worker who wants to come on the show and talk about your life outside of work, we would love to have you. Please send an email with more information to nothustlingpod@proton.me.
Yeah, I can't remember what he picked. But anyway, and they weren't to tell each other what these archetypes were, but they were to like live them out in the actual experience. So,
that's an interesting way to shake up a dynamic.
Yeah. Yeah, and I didn't know what they would pick either at first. Like they just picked them, and so yeah, just having that sort of like element of chance. It could have given them roles, and that might have worked just fine. But so she was like, okay, like when I was working more closely,
they didn't choose them; they just like random picked.
Yeah, at random. Okay. Yeah. And then to show up to this scene with these roles without even telling each other what they are. So they show up. She comes in and she's like, Harry, she had a bad day. And so then they're kind of both like, they know each other has been given these like random roles that they're not sure. So there is almost like a team like nature to it, which I think also I'm actually just realizing now is why I did that, which is great that I'm talking about it. Because they're both kind of like, they know that like, oh my God, we're trying to like act this out and we just got these roles and like, like you actually want to help the other person like do a good job, So she comes in and she's like, she starts talking to him about her day, and she just sort of on the fly is making up that she's a lingerie engineer.
Okay.
That's her job. She's a lingerie engineer, and she's working with this couple, and they're trying to do a role play, and she's trying to create lingerie. It's her job is to create lingerie for scenes specifically.
Yeah.
She's working with a couple, and she's feeling a little concerned because the man kind of wants the woman to like be a virgin, and the woman's kind of like, I don't know, I feel like that. So she's like, what are the things coming up there? Like, what can it just be play? And so this is how she like brings in like virgin.
This is so interesting how different people would like approach the
right. Like how would you combine those things? I don't know. And so of course then it like continues onward, and like I really wish I could remember his part, but like she had hired me for mostly, so I was like working with her.
Yeah.
But basically like just this sort of like, and they weren't actors by any means. So like spontaneity doesn't come naturally to them. So it just was really like, it felt like really edgy, and it was like bringing edge into their like long-term relationship that felt like they have a lot of edge. So anyway, then of course it turned a little sexy. They're having drinks and as was reported to me, he basically was like, well, like, do you have any of the lingerie that you engineer? Like, can I see some? And she's like, yeah, sure. You can let me know like what you think is more virgin like and what isn't, And so then she's, just showcasing her lingerie. And then of course I heard they had like the best sex that they've had in like 5 years together.
Oh, that's so cool.
Experience. So yeah, it just, I know. Yeah. I feel like tingles in my heart, like talking about it, even also I can't remember what, his roles were, but yeah, it just like those kinds of things, which we can create from our own, like, minds and hearts. And
yeah, that's so neat. So how did you start? How did you get into that? You have a theater background?
Yeah. So I have some training in theater. I have also a lot of training in relational dynamics, different structures. I have done one-on-one training with Esther Perel.
Really?
Yeah, like 10 years ago when she was easier to access. Now that would be really impossible, but I was able
Wow.
to train with her in New York
I
for
really like her.
yeah, she's wonderful. She's
Yeah.
like yeah, there's so much nuance she can speak to, and
Yeah. Yeah.
so I've really just brought all of that together
Yeah.
to
Mhm.
and it's not yeah, it's not easy to explain, not as easy to find clients, but it's kind of like yeah, people find me through yeah, various
That's a neat job though, because it's very creative and very fun. Like, and I think you probably get to experience people in ways that that's one of the things that I like about our work that we do is that we get at, like, I always feel like I get to, so let me back up. Before I was a sex worker, I was a doula. And as a doula, one of the things a birth doula, what I really loved about the work was that I was walking into one of the most intense moments of like a couple's life and figuring out how to help and negotiate without interrupting their natural rhythm with each other, and that was always a tricky thing, but also like a really beautiful thing. Like I remember one time, one of the couples that stand out in my head because they were so sweet was a very nerdy couple. Like he was a programmer, and when at the downtime, he was looking up, they were still trying to figure out what their baby's name was going to be. She's in active labor. And he's looking up available domain names because he wants to make sure that like his kid can like use their name as like a domain, so
wow.
what they were doing first. But then when things got a little more intense, I suggested that we take like lap walks. The maternity ward was kind of like a circle with a hallway that you could like walk all the way around. And so I was like, why don't we start taking walks? We'll take laps around the circle because then you can get things moving and it's less uncomfortable than like sitting still. And so we started doing that. But as contractions got more intense, every single time one would start, she would stop and they would get in a slow dance position and he would rock her the whole time. And it's like they would have these like very intimate moments of like slow dancing in the hallway of a hospital with her wearing a hospital gown. And it was so beautiful because they were like, so nerdy and cerebral, like in their like day-to-day like lives. But when we were in this moment, they just like came together in this way that was like so beautiful. And it was funny too, because it would be like all three of us would be walking and talking, and then it would start and I would like step back and they would dance. And then we were doing this like interplay for hours of me joining them and then pulling back and giving them a moment, and there was something about that was lovely, but all of that work was very much connected to like, how do you enter into something intense for somebody else and not, uh, and let them have what they want without interrupting or changing that. And I often think about that in my work as like an escort. I also feel like people come in with like a lot of intense like wants and needs, and that it's our job to like pick that up and figure out how to channel that in some way. And I really enjoy that aspect of it. So I feel like there's a way in both of those jobs that I got to be like very close to things, to parts of people that you're not usually close to, unless it's your partner or something like that. So I was wondering if there's an extent to which your work in this immersive theater feels like that, like you get to connect on a different level with people than you otherwise would.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I do. And I just wanted to reflect really quick about the couple. Like that to me feels like that's alchemy of the moment. That's
Mhm.
like theater kind of when you think about it is, there's lots of time, like acting, learning lines, learning movements. It's like it feels like a lot of preparation, in like a classic sense. But like, I'm also super interested in and work with like what is needed in the moment.
Yeah.
Like, and I don't know, to what extent that couple had talked about like this, obviously like this is what soothes me. This is what
Yeah.
makes my nervous system feel safe. Of course, all of that is super foundational and
Right.
important. And how do we use that in the moment?
Yeah.
Um, not be a form of like, I mean, of course it's not theater, it's all genuine, but it's like we're sourcing from what I kind of call like two different realms of knowledge. Like there's the like, I know what soothes my partner,
Yeah.
we've talked about what works for us and how in the moment can we utilize that when perhaps, one person's window of tolerance, you might be outside of it, or like you might be
Yeah.
reactive or charged. And so I
Yeah.
really like focusing on that, like when I can really get into like the nitty gritty with a couple, which like not a lot of them like let me do that, but sometimes if I really can, it's like
Yeah.
to bring artistry like into the moment.
Yeah.
So
I love that notion of like artistry and a
mhm.
little bit of tenderness or softness. Yeah. So, I mean, I know that you spend a lot of time like in preparation to get everything ready. Theater also has like the set and the stage and the cues and all of that, but it also has an audience. So I was wondering, do you ever like shift into the role of audience member? Are you there when people are having an experience? What's your relationship in the actual moments?
Yeah. I can sort of shape shift from like it's sort of whatever the container asks for or whatever we've kind of agreed upon. So that could be if it is a couple. So there's a lot of trails here in Colorado when I do work one-on-one with people, or when I work here in Colorado with people, there are trails that start in the same place, but then they have divergent paths,
Mhm.
and the trails have different names. So at some point they've been given a clue about which path they're supposed to go down. So I usually like to start them at the same trailhead and then separate them. And then there might be something that happens or an invitation that occurs for each of them that's
Yeah.
different, that will be perhaps relevant to whatever their internal struggle might be, or something that they're
Mhm.
trying.
Mhm.
So in that situation, like maybe with, this is for an example, like for one woman, she really really wanted to re-access her creativity and in the form of watercolor painting, and she just found she just wasn't making time for art. She was
Yeah.
like someone who, this was actually a newer relationship, and she was still kind of in the throes and like making him her world and knowing that
Mhm.
that wasn't actually good for the relationship. And so I then like I was actually I actually had someone to do this, but then they bailed on me, so I had to do it, which wasn't ideal. But like I was then someone who I was just painting in the. She just came upon me, and I was just painting in the
Uh-huh.
woods,
Uh-huh.
and there was music playing, and I had like a little speaker. It was one of her favorite Italian composers, and it was clear, the music was actually loud enough where it was kind of clear that there was maybe not we weren't going to talk. I mean, she could have asked me a question over it, but it was like
Mhm.
loud enough um, where I'm just kind of in my own world painting.
Yeah.
And I had laid
Mhm.
next to me the same sets, like for someone to join me, and so then I
Yeah.
just like saw her, and I just like kind of like waved and like did like a little beckoning, and so she
Mhm.
like came on
Mhm.
over, and like she understood it wasn't not using words is actually really powerful. It's like the simplest
Yeah.
thing, like
Mhm.
not talking, just, maybe you've been to Sleep No More or Then She Fell in New York, both like really some well-known like immersive theater performances, obviously on a really large scale, but there's not any talking in them. And there
Mhm.
there can be like a power to like and a quietness to listen to gesture and to like
Mhm.
be sensing the moment in that way. And so
Mhm.
yeah, in this way, it's just like, yeah, come on over, like join
Yeah.
me, take a
Mhm.
moment and draw like whatever we're seeing in front of us. So sometimes I'll like act.
Yeah, yeah. You know what's funny about you saying that is that I recently wrote a piece for my column on pup play and people who are interested in pup play, like within the BDSM community. And I didn't know that much about it because I'm not part of pup play community. So that was the first time that I've like asked people who are into it, like, why are you into it? And what are you getting out of this? Because I was approaching them like as a journalist. And so we're talking. And many of the people, like more than half of them, said that part of the appeal is that they stop talking, is
Yeah.
that all of the interactions that they have are through gesture, through like smell, through other senses, through like touch, where they're acting as like puppies or as handlers who are interacting non-verbally, and that there was something that tapped into like a different part of them. And that was so interesting to me because it wasn't something I thought of, but like the appeal is that you're no longer verbally processing things, that you can do something else.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I feel like relief in my body, even you just saying that.
Yeah. 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 Super interesting. So one last question, and then I'm gonna run into, and then we'll go to the wrap-up questions. I'm curious how the work that you've done in this like immersive theater has translated into the work that you do as a companion or vice versa.
Oh, that's such a great question because I was actually like, wait, I still want to tell you about the like intertwining of it. Like, of course you asked it. Yeah, I mean, it definitely influences me, and that would not be for a lot of clients. Like that just it'd be
Yeah,
that
sure.
would turn off. Like, nope, thanks.
Yeah.
And like I feel like the clients, especially the regulars I have now, like yeah, I think I hope. I mean, they keep returning, so hopefully, but
Yeah.
they're pleased with or delighted by like the kind of schemes I come up with. And
Mhm.
one of the things, and I, just kind of like don't try this at home unless you're really comfortable with your client. But I the client I have who I've been seeing for about 5 years, and he really trusts me to like if I ask, if I ask for, an extra amount of money to and a certain time frame in our date, like he'll be like, "Yep, here it is." Like
Yeah.
just let me know
Mhm.
what you're doing, and I pay for a thing. And so but one time it had been a while since we saw each other, and I wanted to create something for him that's I'm calling it a sensory poker run. So do you
Mhm.
know what a poker run is?
No.
A poker run, classically is, I mean, someone made it up, but like, it's either like a walking thing or a biking thing. It's usually people do it to like get people outside, and you collect, one card from like 5 stations. People
Okay.
might, or whatever, brewery tour or whatever it is, like, and you collect one card. And so then at the end, of course, you have five, and then you play the hand at the very end. So it's like,
Interesting.
that's
Yeah.
so geographical poker run. So I made up something called a sensory poker run, which is like you encounter different parts of Amber within
Ah.
an Airbnb or a hotel, and you have to like play certain games. So I like like kind of laughing at myself, like I can't believe I let some clients let me do this. Anyway, so I thank God bless this one client. So he's like, I was like, okay, so for our 36 hour, I need access to the Airbnb first, before you get there. And I need you to arrive at least like 2 hours after I do, so I have some time to set something up. And he was like, okay. He just like trust me. Uh, so yeah, we figured that out.
Yeah.
And I got to the Airbnb and I like set things up, and I'll just describe from his perspective. So he lands, he's like, Amber, I'm here. Is it okay to come by at like, whatever,
Mhm.
5 p.m. And I text, I'm just laughing at myself. I text back, I'm like, I don't know what I wrote, but it's like, hello, like your companion has been kidnapped. Like she's been disassembled into multiple parts, and you have to come and find her and put her back together.
Oh my gosh.
And everyone like never sees me again. It's like she's he's like, okay, I'm coming.
Yeah.
Like, so,
So fun. He's like, I'm game. Whatever it is you want to do,
yeah,
we can do
very
it.
much you. And it does get sexy. So, and so then I have pre-recorded sort of like my voice, and I have like a speaker set up that I bring, and it's like, it'll say like correct answer, wrong answer, or like move on to the next room. So those things
Mhm.
I'm finagling somehow
Yeah.
on my phone. He comes inside. So uh, the first sense is aroma. So I have directed him to go into one of the bathrooms. So this needs to be a large space, not just like a hotel room. It's be a little difficult. So in the bathrooms, and there's directions in there to you have to figure out what is Amber's scent. So in there, I've sprayed maybe like a lavender spray that I found around the Airbnb or something
Yeah.
on one
Yeah.
of the cards. Another card is like, another perfume, something I've like put together. And then another card is my perfume. And so, and
Yeah.
it's a perfume
Mhm.
I wear often, so he should know it. So,
Yeah. Yeah.
setting someone up with an easy win. So he's in there, and it's like card A, B, or C. And so he's like he picks the right one. And so then like my voice is like, correct, like,
Yeah.
please read the card on the thing. And the next card tells him to go to the next station. And anyway, I won't say that all of them, but like the touch one, I particularly love because at that point he's accessed, I think sound and scent, but not touch. So I have him sit blindfold on a couch, and he has to guess what body parts of mine he's touching. So,
Oh, how
of
fun.
course, like first I'll like put an elbow in his hand. He'll be like elbow, and then of course I'll put my breast in his hand.
Yeah.
And he guesses correctly. Hopefully he does.
Yeah.
And and then he collects a card at each station. So this is like the Amber sensory poker run.
Yeah, how fun.
And anyway, to like access sight at the end, it's like he has to do another thing, and then like he sees me, and it's just like we just like laugh. But then we like pick a hand, and it's like who wins the poker hand. So I mean, I don't know, like what is it?
Fun, though. Yeah.
Weird, like it is just a way of meeting, right? It's like through
Yeah.
that's my smell, through my touch, through my
Yeah.
sound.
Yeah.
So
And it's also like builds that anticipation of like, I can't wait for the next, like for it to be a fully immersive thing and not just like one of the senses. And there's something about going through all of them that makes that really exciting, I think.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah. This is delightful. It's so interesting to hear about how you run your business because it's so cool.
Yeah. I started to feel a little like silly and self-conscious as I was describing that, but that's just
No. I think it's really cool. Yeah. I think it's really neat.
yeah.
Okay. So I like to end all the episodes asking for three questions. So the first one is, what are you reading right now?
I am reading a book called Courting the Wild Twin by Martin Shaw. Yeah, he's an ecologist, and I believe he wrote this book kind of like all at once. Like he just like channeled it, and like it's a streaming book. It's kind of like if Women Who Run with the Wolves had like a slim counterpart written by a man. Like it tells like myths and then kind of goes into like the general meaning of them. And it's just I wish I could describe it a little better, but it's almost every page I've like underlined different things. It's just there's so much sight and so much truth in it, and like soul knowing. I'm gonna leave it at that.
Okay. All right.
And
what are you listening to?
Ooh, you mean like music
or a podcast or whatever you spend your time listening to?
I was like, how am I going to answer this? I love writing in the morning, and I use music to set that space. And I listen to Sofiane Pamart. He is a modern, badass French pianist.
Oh, wow. How do you spell his last name?
Pamart is Pamart. And Sofiane, it's like Sofiane. But I think his albums are great for just like 45 minutes to an hour of writing. It just like start to finish.
Nice. Cool. And what are you excited about?
Well, so another like overlap that I would love to do that I haven't done much of is that I would love to merge like this kind of work with working with couples in an intimate way too. Way. So I have been like behind the scenes creating a little page for that and like specific dates and like activities for it. So I'm excited to launch that. Been going a little slow on it, but yeah.
I think that's a great idea because I was talking to another guest about working with couples, and we were both saying that it's a difficult thing to do because one person usually comes in more ready for it. Another person is often more apprehensive. You have to work very hard to make sure that both of them feel comfortable, that neither one of them feels like you're spending more time and attention on the other one, that, that there's a lot of dynamics to deal with that you don't deal with when you're working with one person. And so there's something I think that could be really great about going on like a journey and getting both people to arrive somewhere ready for an experience before you have it.
Yeah. I think there's a lot of possibility there. So
Yeah. That's cool. Well, thank you so much. Where can people find you?
My website is meetamberdelice.com. And I'm also on Twitter and Instagram as Meet Amber Délice. So yeah.
Okay. Thank you so much for chatting with me today.
Thank you, Jessie.
Thank you for joining us for another episode of When We're Not Hustling. I'm your host, Jessie Sage. You can find me on Twitter at sapiotextual or visit my website at jessiesage.com. The show was produced by Emily Foster and the music is by Benjamin J. Beninati. You can follow us on Twitter and Instagram at Not Hustling Pod. To support the show and get sneak peeks, please go to patreon.com/sapiotextual. For more information about our show and what we do here, please visit our website at nothustling.com.